discussion, you need to have something, some external stimulus that everyone has access to, like for example the novel in Anne's example, or maybe students have read a newspaper article and then are going to discuss some of the issues that arose from that, or something like that. So let's say we've opened the discussion. The idea is, in an ideal world, the teacher would just be able to sit back and let a discussion just flow. The students would thrust and parry between each other. One would raise an issue, the other would sort of question it or take it and then build on that and go somewhere else with it. And it would just sort of naturally conclude to a nice little conclusion that everyone could agree on. Obviously that's quite an idealistic approach, but who's got, I'm just going to open up the floor to everyone here. What sort of techniques or guidelines could we as teachers use in laying down some ground rules for a discussion?
Do you want me to? Sorry, I don't want to dominate it here. Well, I think the most important thing is so that everybody gets an opportunity to talk and listen, and to be listened to properly, to make sure that no one speaks over the top of someone else, so that when someone's got the floor, if you like, the other children are encouraged to listen to the point, so that they have time to think about it, and might be something a little bit different to how they feel, and it might open their mind.
Mm-hmm. So giving each student time to speak out
and make sure
everyone's listening. Yeah, good. Amber?
It's really important not to put somebody else's opinion down. Like, you don't have to agree with it, but you do have to accept that, you know, there are other opinions out there. So it's really important as a teacher to be able to deal with that in the classroom.
Yeah. So that everyone's views feel like everyone knows their views about it.
In our high school art class, we had a whiteboard marker, and we sat in a circle, and the people that wanted to talk, they put their hands up, and then it would go from person to person that had the whiteboard marker got to speak. So then it was really good that people didn't talk over the top of each other, and you knew who was in charge of the discussion at that point. So it was good.
That's a good practical example. Has anyone got anything to talk about?
You always have to bring it back to the subject, basically. So, like, you know, some kid could completely go off on a different tangent, but as long as you can sort of pull it back in focus, that's a lot of things.
It has to be open-ended, because if you are expecting a direct answer, then it could get to that very quickly, and you wouldn't have taken the correct steps to get to that answer. Am I making sense? It's got to be open-ended, so there's no answer at the end of the day. It doesn't matter what someone's interpretation is of an artwork. It's just that the discussion is taking place, so everybody learns a bit more.
So, like in Stuart's family guy example, the better of the solutions, or the better of the questions was not just what's family guy like, but it was open enough to allow fluid discussion, but also end up at a specific point. No, that's good. Anyone else?
Could use small groups, and you know, as opposed to just having the whole class, you could use smaller groups, so that some people might feel really intimidated having the whole class that they've got to speak in front of, whereas if you put them into smaller groups, they might feel more comfortable to just speak.
I think that might be something that, like, some kids are really outgoing and just want to sort of say everything's on their mind, but other kids will be really reserved and shy, and so part of that will be sort of allowing or creating an environment that allows each child to feel their thoughts about them, but also that they will never be put down for what they say. Has anyone else got any ideas of some guidelines that maybe students should look at following in a discussion?
Would it be good for the teacher to sort of have a hand in it and try to, like, maybe one student might ask a question and the teacher would sort of try to elaborate out on that a bit? Is that sort of what he wants to focus on? He or she wants to focus on as the actual topic of study? Yeah. So, like, trying to direct things a little bit so students are learning what ideally they would be learning. Yeah.
I think at the moment I'm focusing more on just what students do as opposed to the way the teacher interacts with them.
Oh, okay.
But that's a good one. Hang on to that point, because we'll be coming up to that in a second. I think one of the things that's probably most important is that students are open to having their minds changed. stubborn usually, so this is hard for me. But if they're willing to change their ideas, they're not just going to get stuck in their ways and say, well, this is what I believe and that's why, and I'm not going to think about any other solution, but to be open to maybe a new way of thinking or something that they haven't really considered before. I've had Miss Stewart write these things down, so if you want to, at any point you can just write them down and stuff. That's in an ideal world where students will just have a discussion on their own and it will take place, and the teacher could just sort of not even be there because they're sort of mature enough to have this discussion happen themselves. But in the real world, that's probably not really going to happen, even with really, really, really good kids who are really switched on and discussing. So what are some ways that us as teachers, or we as teachers, can facilitate a discussion? So in what ways can we get maybe the students to think deeper about an issue, or to, what are some ways that maybe we do that?
You could make sure kids would be very short and sharp quite often with answers, and just exploring their answer and make sure they're explaining themselves thoroughly.
Yeah, and that's what you said as well earlier, Gabrielle, about sort of elaborating their ideas and that sort of thing. That's good.
Ask if other students agree or disagree with what that student's saying. Explain themselves as well.
And that's probably a good option to not sort of like quieter students who maybe haven't had a lot of chance to say stuff. Like ask them their opinion on that topic or what that person said. Yeah, that's good. I also think asking students to, if they know all the terms and words that are being talked about, and maybe every once in a while asking if there's anything that they don't understand at the time, and so just sort of opening up the floor to anyone who needs elaboration about a term or a concept, because we want everyone to be on the same wavelength, and if people don't know what a term means, then they're going to get left behind in that discussion, or they might have a different understanding of the issue that's being talked about.
You might need to present your own contrary views to the group.
Yeah, sometimes.
Group think that and
sometimes you might need to be a devil's advocate to sort of stir the pot a bit. And was it Nicole who gave an example of the art discussion? Anne, when you were talking about Girton, and how they were using their knowledge of the book and the things they've learned in there, and then applying that through to the real world. I think that's a great way to allow the students to present the knowledge in a way that, well, not present the knowledge, but use it in the real world and to apply it in what they know. And so if a discussion is discussing quite abstract concepts, ask them to apply that to a certain situation that they're familiar with, and that brings it back to where they're at and probably makes it more real for them. I think that's about it. I think I'm probably out of time. Yes. So thank you for listening, thank you for participating, and I'll now hand over to Gary.